Again, thank you so much for joining us. Now, the World Economic Forum Africa Summit has come and gone, and general sentiment was optimistic. One observer, Dudu Msomi from Busara Leadership Partners, says in the follow-up, South Africa needs to re-emphasize manufacturing as a means to regain its edge in the global economy. She now joins us to unpack an article that she wrote on this particular subject matter. So a very good morning to you, Dudu. Thank you so much for joining us.
Morning.
I just want to read some parts of that article that you wrote as a frame of reference. You say that it's laudable for politicians to talk about Africa sharing one destiny. But at the same time, you say that this does not have to be at the expense of a competitive economy. Could you elaborate?
I mean, in the context of African Union, it's really important to encourage unity. It's a very emotive subject. And it's important that Africans understand that there are some common challenges. And we all have the challenge of increasing economic prosperity for all our countries. However, that shouldn't come at the expense of each country. And you can see that other countries are not holding back. Nigeria rebased its GDP to make itself more attractable. Kenya did. We didn't focus so much on Kenya. We're focusing on Nigeria because it ended up surpassing South Africa. But it's very important that every country continues to look at what makes it competitive and to highlight those issues, because we're all trying to attract capital. We're all trying to attract foreign direct investment. And we all have to have a unique value proposition. Why should capital come to our country versus another? So the more the emerging market contributes to global GDP, the more we all competing with each other, even though we are united Africa.
Still on that dichotomy, let's talk about intra-Africa trade. You know, the slogan, African solutions to African problems, comes to the fore. What about the trade that we have with each other in terms of growth?
Aren't we so happy that the tripartite free trade agreement has now, it's going to be inaugurated, I think, this week in Egypt. It's taken since 2008. We started a bit late. So intra-Africa trade has been weaker. I mean, we have been focusing, especially South Africa, in terms of our trading partners in Europe, in the US, and now more China. So it's very important. I think a lot of countries have been kind of surprised why South Africa has not been the biggest exporter to the rest of Africa. I think we were focusing a lot on the political solutions in terms of Africa being conflict-free. But that's what makes it so important in the space that we work in as Busara Leadership Partners, when we work with leaders, to understand the diversity of solutions is very important. You can't just focus on one. You have to have a multi-pronged approach. So while you're finding political solutions, they also have to be economic. So the fact that this agreement has taken us since 2008, at least it's here now. So it is going to make simplify in terms of export and import and customs procedures. It's going to make movement around the continent easier.
The fact that South Africa is being surpassed somewhat on a number of fronts when it comes to its position that it used to hold so dearly as economic leader on the continent in terms of growth as well. Talk to me about the areas where we've been complacent.
You know, the term complacent makes me feel a bit uncomfortable because I don't think we have been. I think we have not had the sense of urgency. And in this world, you kind of have to be agile to catch opportunities. So areas like the free trade has taken long, so that was one of them. In terms of infrastructure, we've been talking about the deficit of infrastructure in Africa as a whole for a long time. But we also have to, I mean, I was just kind of reflecting some of the debates we used to have in our economics class with regards to whether inflation targeting was a priority versus, you know, not so much focusing on inflation, but looking at investing in the infrastructure. Because even from 1994, already our infrastructure was degrading. We needed to kind of invest more. We were encouraging more investment, but actually not looking at the infrastructure that's going to drive that. So we have forgotten that we made certain choices, but we also remember we had the apartheid debt that we had to pay. So that money, instead of looking and focusing on developing our country, was going out of the country. We soon forget that. But it doesn't take away the fact that we did lose a bit of time not focusing on those things. So in terms of energy, transport, ICT, so now we have to gear up. I think our president was very vocal during the WEF, inviting investors in terms of infrastructure. Africa has huge opportunities in terms of that. I mean, even Transnet in South Africa is doing a lot in terms of rail reinvestment. So we're back on track. But we have lost so much time.
And we must now sustain this momentum that we're starting to build up. But what you touched on the World Economic Forum in your last answer. What did you make of the Africa Summit?
Well, it is always important to network. It's always important to showcase your country. And that's what, different presidents and different political leaders and business leaders do. So a lot of meetings happen on the sidelines, which is very important. But it's what you do after that. So when you make these connections, because there are many stereotypes around Africa, so it's always important to have these platforms where people share and give insights in a calm manner, where people can engage and share in-depth insights about each other's countries. So there's always a platform for that. But it doesn't mean that as South Africa, in between the WEF, we're not doing anything. We have platforms, we are meeting partners, we are promoting our country, so everything helps.
You also touched on the subject of corruption and its effects on the economy. Can you give us your thoughts when it comes to that subject matter?
We've been thinking about it top of mind at the moment after the FIFA scandal. Which has rocked the entire globe. I wrote an article about it, but I was trying to focus on the conditions, some of the conditions that allow this to happen. Conditions such as power. I mean, what is the value of a position and the access it gives you to power and authority in order to be able to sway things, in order to be able to dish out favors. It's good for the ego to be in that kind of position. And it's not just government. Who is doing the bribing? Who's doing the payment? We are all in this together. So we all have to look at our own ethics as individuals. You can put legislation, but you can't legislate ethics. You just can't do it because we'll always find loopholes and gaps. I also looked at the aspect of greed. Because a lot of us actually just want to accumulate more wealth, but in not making much effort. So sometimes we do just want to get things because we can, and even sometimes when we don't deserve them. So, and all those are individual. I mean, it's very difficult to have legislate your internal deficiencies and inadequacies. And the other area I looked at was the risk of punishment. If you know you're not going to be punished, what is the disincentive for not being corrupt? Because you will negotiate your way through. If you have people in powerful positions, you'll be able to get away with it.
So it's a societal issue.
It is a societal.
It's one that we need to look into our psyche, the culture, the norm, and what has made it okay, more than just the legislation, which of course in and of itself is important, but we need to deal also with the way of thinking, the way of doing business, the way of running a country.
You wouldn't need legislation if we automatically were self-disciplined. So it is all about ourselves. We're very quick at judging and criticizing government and criticizing us, but we're all part of it. We're all contributing towards it.
Of course. I mean, when you're giving that bribe or cold drink to that traffic officer, it takes two to bribe. Anyway, we're getting swayed a little bit, but let's come back to economic factors in South Africa. You and I were sharing a little story just before we went on air about a friend of mine who wanted to start a crocodile farm so that you could make bags and shoes, and you also spoke about the meat that could be derived from there. And I mean, my first thought was, my gosh, my friend, it's a crocodile, it will be crocodiles there. And she responded and said, but do you know how many women of color in South Africa run this institution where they're farming crocodiles for production and for manufacturing purposes? And it gave me something to think about. So let's talk about us as a country being consumers more than we are manufacturers or producers.
I like that thought process because in a country that has challenges, it also presents a lot of opportunities. We can't sit back and keep on looking at government. We as individuals, this is where the entrepreneurship comes from. It is from the individuals. So your friend looking at opportunities. And sometimes when it comes from a place of who in our category hasn't done this, I want to be the first. That's the kind of energy we want. One of the important things that has been holding us back is also our education. with regards to the misalignment, I don't so much say we are not skilled, we just have the wrong skills for what we need. We always talk about the STEM careers in terms of science, technology, engineering, and maths. And we need more of those. Those are the people that kind of are creative, innovative, they create things. So even in manufacturing, you need those types of skills, because even though you can absorb unskilled or semi-skilled laborers, you still need the people with the critical know-how, the people that develop the product. Because even though in manufacturing you use technology, there are areas like light manufacturing where you still work in tandem with the technology, so you don't completely scrape labor in that manufacturing process. So as South Africans, all of us need to be creative. The more problems we have, the more opportunities we have, and this is how we have to look at the world.
More problems that we have, the more opportunities we have to provide those solutions. And you also spoke about whether or not we have the right skills or skills at all. And I like the way that you put that through. But I want to bring it now back to the grassroots level, the schools that we have. Are we creating capacity among our young people to grow up with that mindset of looking at life through the opportunities that it presents? Or are we creating dependency? We depend on the state to provide this. We depend on people to deliver that. Taking a look at the education sector, what would you say?
We're doing both. I think we are quite strong in trying to encourage that we become creative. I think we could go a bit further. I really think we could skew our students to start looking at STEM careers. And how you do that, maybe make sure that all engineering, all science, there are certain courses that should be free in tertiary. That should be free education. We should be encouraging more students to go into FET. We need to sexify FET. Yeah. All of us are going to universities. Entrepreneurs come from those, it's on-the-job training. It is the practical. Those are the people that are our plumbers, our technicians, our electricians, our hairdressers. Those are people in the service industry. Those are the people that become self-employed. Those are the people that become entrepreneurs. So we need to change our mindset. We need to get some inspiration from whether it's South Korea or China in terms of the value they put on education. We shouldn't be spending so much time in the malls. We shouldn't be spending so much time on our Facebook pages and just playing around. If we're finding that math science is something that, because there was a whole generation where you could choose. You didn't have to do maths. So we're playing catch up. If we're finding that we need more time to get competent in that, then that's what we need. We need to be, and a lot of schools are actually doing that. They're there during weekends, they're there until late hours, teachers who are very dedicated, and that should be what should be common amongst all of us. It shouldn't be a unique situation, it should just be the norm.
Lastly, is there political will to do the above that you've just mentioned, but also at the same time, is there will from the private sector to also come on board and assist? Is there that will, I suppose, from the powers that be broadly in South Africa to implement the change and see it from the bottom up?
From the interactions one has had with the two ministers that are in charge, in terms of their personal passion for education, it's undoubtedly there. It has to penetrate throughout the value chain. But it also has to be within the parents. It has to be within all of us, whether we are students or even professionals who can give their time on weekends. So I think it's there, but it kind of has to be our mantra. There is something that we're lacking in terms of that sense of urgency amongst all of us, of understanding that we need to delay our gratification. Yeah. We can't have it all now. We need to invest so that the new generation or the future generation has a better chance. At the moment, we're just a consumerist kind of society where everybody's like, it's my turn, it's my turn. But we're not really laying the foundation in order to make sure that it is solid for the next generation.
All right, and lastly, the private sector?
If you actually look at how much a lot of them are spending on CSI, directed towards education, but I suppose because we're all doing little things in our little corners in terms of really seeing the impact, maybe we're not really seeing the impact in terms of whether we are changing the tide. But it seems, I think we say the right things, we sometimes spend it in the right areas, but whether it's having that required impact. And I think the required impact comes from us as individuals, as students, as teachers, as the department and everybody else working together.
All right, we'll have to leave it there, at least for now. Thank you so much for your thoughts and insights to Dudu Msomi from Busara Leadership Partners. And do stay with us. That's all we have for you for this particular interview for now. Let's take a look at what the weather has in store. Phil is standing by.
Yeah, thanks very much. Let's take a look.